Abraham Lincoln once asked the question, how many legs does a dog have if we call the tail a leg? And I know you know the answer to that. The dog has 4 legs. Just because we call a tail a leg doesn't make it true. And that's how we go through life. We go through life seeking to flourish and to thrive. And in order to do that, we have to have at least some handle on what is true and what is not true. Well, my name is Dr. Albert Spalding. Welcome to episode 2 of Transition to Hope, Truth-Seeking in a Nutshell. Fake news, or at least a biased spin on the news, has been around for a long time. Cancel culture has been around for a long time. If you want to read about a newspaper that got canceled in the mid-19th century, you can go to the LDS Church website and read about the NAUVOO EXPOSITOR. There was actually in NAUVOO, Illinois, already a sort of mainstream press, if you will, for that town. And its motto, it was called Times and Seasons, and its motto was, "Truth will prevail." However, a competitor, a competing newspaper with a different slant on things popped up. It was called the NAUVOO EXPOSITOR, and its motto was, "The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth." But the problem is, the truth that was offered by the NAUVOO EXPOSITOR, which you can read the entire edition today, and I'm including the link in the show notes, but the claims of the NAUVOO EXPOSITOR about whether or not those were true or not true, those are still being debated today by scholars and historians and researchers and others even today. And so the NAUVOO EXPOSITOR, though, got canceled. The city council and Joseph Smith decided to send a marshal over and about 100 people from the NAUVOO Legion and destroy the printing press and the NAUVOO EXPOSITOR so that it could never publish an edition after the first publication. Well, the question that we would ask then as we consider different competing claims about what is true and what is not true, and in fulfillment of our desire, most of us want the truth to prevail. We want the whole truth and nothing but the truth. And so how do we arrive at that? How do we know what is true? And part of the answer to that is, how do we know anything? How do we know what we know about anything? And the word for that question, the word that summarizes that question, is epistemology, which asks the question, how do you know what you know about anything? And there are a lot of influences. Authority is an influence from the time we learn our first words. We learn that from whom? We learn that from our parents, our caretakers, when they say to us, say mama or say papa or whatever, prompting is being offered by the parent. And that's the authority. The parent is explaining the meaning of words. And so we come to know that by authority. In fact, about 99% of what we know is not based on first-hand direct experience, but it's based on gathering of information from others, from whom we consider to be authoritative. Our upbringing itself, sociologists will tell us, especially moral truth, what we know to be right and wrong, what we know to be ethical and unethical, is mapped primarily to our upbringing. We also use logic, like deduction. We also use we gather facts. We gather scientific evidence. We listen to kind of an inner voice, an inner conscience. We draw from a number of sources of data points to arrive at a particular conclusion of really a probability using induction or abduction, which is where we say, well, there are actually several things that are probable. Which fits the evidence the best? And then even intuition informs how we come to know things. And our community, not just our family upbringing, but our entire community, our neighborhood, our ethnic group, if we identify with a particular ethnic group, our society, our community, even the media have an influence on how we know what we know. And just a gut feeling. When in doubt, trust your gut is often a suggestion for people who are trying to sort things out, especially moral and ethical issues. And then finally, How do we know what we decide we don't know? Because it can't be known. That's skepticism. Skepticism is a truth claim about truth claims. It is a truth claim that claims that truth cannot be known. And so all of these are different kinds of influences. Philosophers and psychologists and other scholars have kind of organized them into some different categories, such as empiricism, which picks up the scientific method, induction and abduction. Authority, which includes tradition, which includes a consensus, an appreciation for a larger number or even a majority arriving at a particular conclusion. Logic, which you can't do without evidence very well, but logic and reasoning and rationalism is as we try to make sense and draw and find coherence in different claims and facts and ideas and suggestions. And then feelings, emotional, experiential. And the key to this, the scholars will tell us, the key to this is that we're in real danger if we rely on any one of them to the exclusion of the other. And to the exclusion of the others. They all kind of need to work together. Yes, some people will emphasize feelings and emotional and experiential understandings as opposed to authority, tradition, consensus. Others will want to focus on scientific evidence. But even the scientific evidence, they have to use some logic and some reasoning in order to really arrive at any understanding of knowledge or even truth. So relying on one to the exclusion of others is dangerous. And that's why it's really kind of troubling if you hear someone say, for example, here's a book, read it, and then decide if there's a burning in the bosom that tells you whether or not it's true. You'll feel whether or not it's true. And this is, the burning in the bosom is actually part of the Doctrines and Covenants. It has to do with whether or not I can arrive at a conclusion about the truthfulness of, for example, the Book of Mormon. And when I do that to the exclusion of other considerations, I'm probably on some dangerous ground. But that is the epistemology that is promoted for arriving at a conclusion about whether or not I should accept the Book of Mormon to be true. And this is particularly difficult for bishops and stake presidents, Relief Society officers, and CES teachers and others, because you have people coming up to you. They have questions about the Book of Mormon, about the anachronisms, the steel swords and other anachronisms within the Book of Mormon. They have questions about the Book of Abraham as a translation. They have questions about polygamy. They have questions about blacks in leadership in the church. And they are truth seekers, and you want the best for them. You want them to find truth. But what's in your toolbox? What have you been given by the church in order to respond to these questioners, these people you love? And really, the most common response is the same as the response that was given by M. Russell Ballard as if you will, coaching you as a bishop or other leader, coaching you on how to respond. Here's what M. Russell Ballard suggested.
So before you make that spiritually perilous choice to leave, I encourage you to stop and think carefully before giving up what it was that brought you to your testimony of the restored Church of Jesus Christ in the first place. Stop and think about what you have felt here and why you felt it.
Well, it's been my experience that when somebody comes up to me with a question, I really need to do more than just to ask them to recall their feelings about how they felt when they first read the Book of Mormon or otherwise explored the truth claims of the LDS Church. People are smarter than that. They want to know how to sort of bring into bear empiricism. What scientific corroboration is there? What historic corroboration is there? What archaeological corroboration? How does this map to experts in translating manuscripts, experts in in examining manuscripts, thousands and thousands and thousands of New Testament manuscripts that were produced in the first 2 and 3 centuries of the Christian church, and to think through logically, how does it make sense when you're given this, and this statement in a particular text? How do you make sense of that? And it's just not enough to say to somebody, well, you just have to rely on your feelings. That's been my experience, that they want more than that. And if you're asking the question, you want more than that. And so how does this map to the New Testament, for example? Well, it maps very well to the New Testament and the Old Testament for that matter, because the Bible says that there is a way that seems right to a man, but in its end, it's the way to death. That we can't trust our feelings. Feelings will doom us if that's our only epistemology. He who trusts in his own heart or his own mind is a fool. But he who walks in wisdom will be delivered. And we'll be talking in a future podcast what wisdom really looks like, especially from a biblical standpoint. But for the moment, let me just explain the problem that exists in all of this. And the problem that exists in all of this is that we're using basically secular epistemology to arrive at metaphysical, spiritual understandings. And so very often people will say, I don't believe in this, or I do believe in that because of this reason or this evidence or these feelings. And what they're doing when they ask that, when they consider that in regard to God, is they're putting their epistemology before their theology. Their sort of mental, physical, psychological way of gathering truth, all the ways we talked about, will then yield to them whether there is a God, and if so, what does that God seem to be like? And that's the problem, because if God really is God, then human understanding, as it says in the Bible, human understanding just won't get there. Instead, we have to put our theology in front of our epistemology. And that's really what the Bible talks about when it says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge, but fools despise wisdom and instruction. I've had lots of conversations in my work as the faculty advisor to Rochelle Christie on a secular campus, lots of discussion about what it means to explore science with a presupposition that there is no God, instead of a presupposition that, well, I don't know if there's a God or not. Let's just explore and see what the evidence tells us. Let's see what the evidence points to. It may be possible that there is a God. That's different. See, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. If I can accept the fact that there's a possible creator God that would be fearsome, that possibility is the beginning of knowledge. That's what the Bible tells us. The Bible says the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom also. And the knowledge of the holy is understanding. There's a starting point, a set of presuppositions that gets in the way of any kind of understanding. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and do not lean on your own understanding. Don't stand under your own knowledge, but instead step out from being under your own knowledge and allow God to be a possibility in your heart and your mind, and begin to trust that possibility. That's what the Bible says. And it's personal. It's very personal. Jesus said, I am the way and the truth and the life. And so when we look at the life, the perfect life, and the death and the resurrection of Jesus Christ, recognizing that he is God, recognizing that he is the only one who can say, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That makes a big difference. So in the next few podcasts, we're going to kind of expand on some of these ideas. Today we looked at the very starting point of truth-seeking. The next podcast we're going to do is going to be talking about seeking God. If seeking an understanding of a truth claim at sort of a horizontal level is one thing, but to seek God, to go to kind of a vertical level, is another thing. What does that look like? How does that even work? So we'll look at that in episode 3, and then we'll begin to expand on some of the other epistemological questions that that actually precede, they underlie many of the theological questions that we face, that we ask, and that we're faced with when people come to us with questions. That's been episode 2. Thank you for participating in Transition to Hope.
This has been Transition to Hope with your host, Dr. Albert Spalding. We care deeply about folks who are experiencing a faith crisis, or who are trying to help a friend or fellow ward member sort through their shelf of questions. We want to be a positive and helpful resource for you. If you'd like to talk through your doubts, questions, or concerns in a safe and non-threatening dialogue, please reach out to us at our contact page at www.transitiontohope.org. You can also find show notes for today's podcast and other helpful information at our website. And if you'd care to donate to Transition to Hope, you can do so at the donate button. We'd love it if you would subscribe to our podcast and give us a rating. Meanwhile, we won't try to do your thinking for you, but we'd love to stand with you and be a resource for you as you seek coherent answers to life's big questions. Most of all, we care deeply about your faith journey. We want to help you transition to hope.